Thank you, Rehan, for joining us and really generous of you to give us time. Again, for everybody here, I'm Mehmet Malik. I've been a long fan of Paklaunch and Alifad. I'm the co-founder and CEO of ScalePost, a company that helps enterprises in how they're visible in AI. Rehan, today, very excited to welcome you. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you so much for hosting. I was looking forward to it. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, and again, everybody here is, I'm sure, fairly familiar with you and all your amazing achievements. But just to kind of summarize things, I'm excited to be hosting you today. You're truly like serial entrepreneur with built and exited three companies and a lot more in the middle. Your most recent venture, Securiti, which offers data privacy management software, was recently acquired for over $1.7 billion. So again, congratulations on that. Previously, Rehan was also the founder of Elastica, which was acquired by Blue Coat, and before then, you founded WiChorus, and everybody guessed it right. That was also acquired. So excited to dive into the exits and the journey behind each one of those. But really wanted to kind of just take a step back and start on how you started your journey to be a founder, especially when a lot of us, I being a early stage kind of founder myself, we think about a lot of risks and should I do it, should I not? It's completely unknown. How did you step into this side?
Yeah, I think a bit of the journey starts with a bit of aspiration to build something that you really, really care about. And you may have a thought and a vision. And frankly, you don't have to start with the company. You start with the building process actually first. Often, I think that's where the journey starts. So if you take that thread back, even at my undergrad school, which I did from MD, there it was even from very early years, it was about creating things which was necessarily but not solved. And getting hooked into certain things that you really want to see it a bit differently, or the problems that we were trying to address. So I would say literally journey starts from envisioning how the future would look like in certain areas and then digging deep into it. Um, so even there, the very first antivirus software that got done was along with one of my friends that we built that in our undergrad years at the school. And then a bunch of things that we created, we tried to create a business out of it and did very small things. So I would say in teenage years, I would say that's how it started. And I didn't realize that over a decade, maybe decade and a half back later, I'll be actually doing something in cybersecurity, right? But the very first thing that got built was WiChorus. Just to understand from the company lens point of view, I started my first job at Sun Microsystems and then went into another company that was trying to solve internet for all. At that point, internet was very slow. It was not for developing world. So we're trying to see if we can take the wireless and have internet for all. And that's I went to a company and learned a bunch of things there. Then at that time, it was for more fixed wireless, which was more about for internet going to homes or wireless. And 4G and all these things didn't exist. So the very first company, WiChorus, that was built was with the thought process to say people should actually have like internet in their pocket, but through that they need high-speed internet. Through that they need mobility. They need apps to be coming to them, or at that time like website information to be coming to them, not just text and not just email. BlackBerry was the thing at that point. To actually just have email coming was a big thing. So we built the very first company with that thought process to say how we can enable very high performant internet going to basically mobile devices. Mobile devices at that time was not iPhone. This is pre-iPhone era. That's how it got started. And I would say we got very lucky that what we built back in 2005 and 6 became very relevant in 2007 when the iPhone came. Because what we had built for at that time was at WiChorus was about very high performant 4G backend systems that will serve to these kind of devices that didn't exist at that point in time. And then luckily iPhone shows up and all of a sudden everyone needs the backend infrastructure that could serve multimedia and video and apps and rich kind of things. And everyone needed that kind of a tech. That's how it started in terms of real business. That's how it actually became, WiChorus became successful. And of course, it eventually merged with Tell Labs and all so forth. But I'll say journey of creating things started very, very early. I would say, in undergrad.
Well, it goes all the way back to undergrad. That's certainly it's also then seems like there's always what we see on the outside is, you've had awesome success and you've had from start to exit all the way multiple times, but it can't have been a straight line naturally. And then what are some of the things that if we dive down, like WiChorus, you're solving a problem. Maybe there's things you were doing that didn't work out, right? Those are the things we often don't talk about or learn. Any experiences there, or was it like,
A lot. I think one thing you realize, I mean, from outside, it looks like everything sometimes looks, yeah, raise money, Series A, Series B, C, and all of a sudden you're actually getting acquired. But the day in the life of any, I would say, people who are in a startup, not just the entrepreneur, but everyone who's in a startup, becomes very obvious that if you're really doing a job right, you start with a thesis, and that thesis sometimes is like very often, I will say, is not 100% where the market. It may look like at that point in time when you started something, that's absolutely what you want to build, but markets shift, dynamics shift, needs shift, new technology shows up in the journey, new competitors show up that actually change the game for you. So pretty much the same thing in I will say in WiChorus journey and then Elastica journey and then security journey. Like every time, you keep an eye on the whole landscape and you're tuning it over time. And then some companies have to completely pivot. They were doing A and they have to completely give it up. Pivot, I will explain it as something that you completely give up and start doing something different. Or you expand or you morph. All variations of it, almost everywhere you're going to see that, right? In our scenario, I'll say in case of security, because it's much more relevant here or more recent here, we started with the very clear thesis that data is at the center of an enterprise innovation. In an information age, information, which we call data, is at the center of it, right? And it requires a lot of different kind of security and controls and privacy and all. We need to build a platform which can provide all these kinds of visibility and control. That's how we started. That's the thesis we had. We picked the first blade to be privacy. We picked the very first blade to be privacy back into 2019, 2020. That was a hot topic because in California, that was a thing. But then COVID happened, right? So when COVID happened, frankly, at that point, like nobody really cared about privacy for that point in time. They really cared about people could work from home. They have connectivity, they have laptops, they have everything. So we started with a very strong demand. And essentially, when COVID hit, it kind of tapered very rapidly down in the early days of COVID. Now, luckily, the vision of the company was that we're building a platform where we have to add other blades. And we simply have to accelerate to figure what are the use cases in the platform that we'll add, which have to stay true to our first vision that we had, controls around data. But we pulled in the security of data much more faster than initially we would anticipated. We had to. And I think it was the right thing to do. That crisis kind of caused us to enhance and add more capability in the platform faster. We never got rid of privacy. We still rated at number one in the privacy side. So we didn't pivot from it. And I'm glad we did because eventually that market kind of completely came back. But security capabilities got added. And here also we got lucky in the sense that the things that we had built from 2020 to 2020, end of 2022, when GPT shows up, all of a sudden GPT opened the minds of everyone, including people who work and who are, executives and all the companies, that same power of AI has to come to their work. They have to bring that power of AI and LLMs to their work. And the data is literally the power. So there's no way you can do anything with AI in the enterprise till you actually you give access to your proprietary information, proprietary data. And nobody wants to give access to proprietary data till controls are there. So all of a sudden, the thing that we had built without knowing the AI is coming became like literally one of the most important things. And but we had to again accelerate certain things that we were very aligned with it, but we simply had to accelerate. In during the process, we had to like enhance the platform and all that. The point simply I'm making is that if we didn't keep an eye on the ball, if we didn't react in a way that add on to the platform, and if we did not basically align with where the market really wanted the innovation, you got stuck at any point in time because what does it require? It requires a team that is highly responsive, highly agile, and highly like passionate about solving real problems, and they can respond super fast while enhancing the platform over time, right? And and then what had happened is that same platform, which was really well known for privacy, became well known for security, and then well known for AI, then well known for like other things, and and that became part of the success of the platform itself. So I will say that look, they all look like crises at some point in time of small and big, but you look at it and you basically enhance it and you keep going with that, and that worked out very well.
It's awesome. And again, looks you make it sound simpler, of course, that crisis actually could be a branch to the decision tree of like opportunity or even death, right? So there's a fine line between those often in startups as we
Yeah.
find as founders. And but something I want to kind of hit on, I've kind of seeing a pattern here where you mentioned luck a lot as well, but also you could be too early, right?
Yeah.
And something if you're gonna make an impact as a big player, you can't be player number 105. You gotta be doing something early, but not too early, right? And any thoughts on that at security, especially? It seems like it was some stuff to my novice ears, maybe early, and then you got accelerated into this other kind of areas and dimensions, or maybe at the previous companies as well. How did you navigate that piece of doing something exciting and early, but also then not being too early?
Yeah, that's why I said lucky.
Yeah.
Because you have a vision where the world is going to look like, because you're really investing for the future, right? If you try to build something which already exists, you're already too late. And you're trying to basically envision where you want to kind of have the world to go. The world is not there, but you want the world to go there in a certain way. That you want to make the world look like in a certain way. Um, and what you really one thing is you're projecting. Other thing you also think of this way is that you're also bending where the world is going because you're preaching along the way, right? You're writing about it, you're educating it. If you're in standards body, you're trying to promote it, and you're talking to all the analysts. Like you're trying to basically have morph the future. Not just building product is not enough.
Right.
You're basically trying to educate an entire set of an industry that it should look like that. If you're not successful in that, its success often doesn't happen. Now, so that has to happen, but sometimes some events happen that you could not have made it to happen. But if it's so aligned with your value proposition, what you were preaching, that all of a sudden you become very relevant, right? And if they click in the journey point in time, it's not that you would have been not successful, but the level of success would be very high. So all three times I will say that I can point out which things actually made it to be much more better than if that thing didn't happen. For instance, if iPhone didn't come, the need of very high
Right.
performant multimedia would not have been there. It may have come a year later, or 2 years. Some other vendor may have come. Maybe Nokia would have woken up, or maybe Motorola would have woken up, or Microsoft would have come something with it. But the fact that it was Apple, so that it clicked for us and it really worked. In case of uh, in case of Elastica, we were building something to secure SaaS applications, right? Because SaaS was the whole new thing. But the SaaS was not very, if it was not the norm, right? People used to build their own apps and deploy and serve it. So our bet was that SaaS will happen. And if the SaaS happens, the whole new paradigm is needed. But for that, SaaS has to happen.
Right.
If the SaaS did not happen in point in time, we would have struggled for long. But the SaaS happened. And the part of the reason that SaaS happened fast, Microsoft decided they had to go SaaS, M365 or whatever they called it at that time, OneDrive or whatever. That happened, everyone wanted to go to SaaS. Like after, like it kind of had a effect on the whole industry. And you're a really big beneficiary to the point that what we were building became the hottest thing for 3 years in cybersecurity. It became the hottest thing for 3 years, number one by Gartner,
Right.
right? So that's why I say, look, yes, you're 100% right. If you're too early and the market doesn't arrive, you're going to burn money to actually kind of keep doing, which means you have to move on and do something
Right.
more interesting, like call it pivot, call it enhancement, and so forth. You can't be too early.
Right.
Absolutely.
Makes sense. And that's such a great kind of narrative around that. And I something I've heard from somebody is like expanding the surface area of luck or something like that, where there's other things that could help you or kind of make you go in another direction. Um, but we have the benefit of you having seen not just started one, two, three, but three times kind of in a row, starting and then taking it to the exit. Must be there's a lot of interesting lessons. One particular thing, as there are a lot of founders and execs joining us here, how would you say that, you know, your leadership or influence style has changed from, let's say, when you started the first company to now with security, especially having seen it from beginning to kind of, the end destination for a startup, which is an exit?
I think the core DNA probably doesn't change. Hopefully, I mean, that's what gets it. So things that don't change are actually quite important. Of course, you have to learn over time,
Right.
right? Um, Part of the reason people build things is because they're really passionate about certain thing. They become insanely passionate about certain things and to the point that they really want to see the world in a different way, right? And they kind of commit to it. That hasn't changed, right? So when you, myself and others, if you, part of the reason you do things is not just to build a company. If you're building a company to sell it or building a company to just make money, it often can be a very miserable experience because you're just not in it. You're in it for something else which can keep you going because this journey is very hard. It is brutal, right? Because every step of the way, let's say you start from nothing and you're building a team and then building basically products, one thing building, go to market and then sales and keep getting customers. Like every step of it, you forget that how much actually a heavy lift it is unless you are like so obsessed with it that every day you wake up and you feel energized inherently, even after the brutal yesterday, what you went through is very hard.
Right.
So I think the sense of actually getting obsessed with something and trying to create something and persisting through it, that hasn't changed. Because the moment that changes, you're not in the same group,
Right.
right? But what you learn over time are lessons in every function. You learn the lessons in people, which is biggest thing. Because without good team and good people who are like-minded, who can actually be operating within the same cultural dynamics, um, you cannot build anything because it's actually all about the people who actually build actual real stuff. It's not like one person does it, right? So you learn a lot more about that. And frankly, the hardest part, I will say, literally the hardest part. And then you, of course, learn on every function over time. If you're building for the enterprise, you learn deeper and deeper into one area. How do you actually go enterprise sales? And how do you enterprise marketing? How do you build a brand? How do you actually build a channel? How do you build partnerships? I think over time, I will say, skills have grown over time, I will say. Now, one thing in generally would have looked to do is to pick up on in areas which, frankly, sometimes are very different, like wireless and WiChorus was very different than the cybersecurity of Elastica. And it's okay. I think when I was at Sun Microsystems, I was doing GPUs, and when I did basically the went to wireless, then I made cybersecurity. if you're trying to solve problems, I think you learn different domains over time.
Right. No, that's such a great way to frame that, where we often hear various reasons for why somebody will start a company, but I cannot agree more or stress more how just that solving a problem, as strange or counterintuitive sometimes it may sound, like, oh, it's not about making money, or it's not about doing, yes, all those are kind of byproducts, and I think you've stressed it enough and seen it and practiced it, so it's very kind of inspiring for a lot of us, and at least me personally, to see that. Um, Thank you for that. I know we have a lot of questions, but I will just just maybe take another one before we move on to those very exciting questions. Is you
Sure.
hinted on that a little bit, where there's a lot of pain, and I even heard you say somewhere like suffering, the journey of an entrepreneur, suffering. I get that you want to solve problems, but really, like, what does has kept you going? Because suffering is a really it's voluntary suffering, really, is a really apt word that I find. Just curious to know that side.
Yeah, I think um, so. Like even my own family, right? Sometimes they're like, "Why do you keep doing this thing? Like, just it's okay. Do something, chill a little bit." But I think let's say if you like to hike, you going on a mountain. The person who goes on a mountain can't even breathe. You're going to K2, you can't even breathe. You have oxygen, is suffering, but he's still going to do it because
Right,
inherently you enjoy doing it. Inherently, you really want to do it. So suffering doesn't mean that somebody's forcing you to do it
right,
because there's something even bigger purpose, something much bigger than that, this is not like you're going to persist through it. The point simply I was making that if you don't have that attachment to what you're doing, and
right,
if attachment is to make money, and attachment is just to have fame, or attachment is to have like something else, but solving that problem, that suffering you cannot overcome over for years. You cannot overcome. You may overcome for like maybe for a shorter duration, but you can do it for like many, 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 many years every day, right? But if you're so attached to what you're trying to solve, and in certain areas, whatever it is, whatever you're trying to change in the world, then I think you're going to persist through it. Otherwise, you're not going to persist through it. And same goes for the team around you. And then that's why it's super important to actually have the right team and DNA in that team around you.
right.
That the real magic is done by the team at the end of the day.
Right. No, that's great analogy here. Great to hear. And we are getting a lot of questions. Some of them may be, kind of unrelated to each other, but I'll just pick some, or you please feel free to pick some if they stand out to you. This is very interesting one. How the first one is, how does your engineering education at NED prepare you for the high stakes world of Silicon Valley?
I would say it played a huge role in a very like non-obvious way. So one of the biggest things that when I went to NED, one of the biggest things there was it brought basically some of the brightest kids into one place. It wasn't that it actually had the best resources. It wasn't that it has the best labs. It had the best, you know, talent in one room. And I think that was it. And I think in some ways I will say it didn't have a lot of structure because I think the time they were in, the structure probably it wasn't like so rigorous. What it gave uh, some of the very bright kids in those batch that I was in, I can speak for them, that they would learn on by themselves and they would educate each other, and then they had enough basically room to go follow their passion,
Right,
solve the problem they're trying to solve. If you want to build antivirus software, you're doing it. Somebody writing compiler, somebody's writing Urdu compiler, like whatever they were doing. It had that entrepreneurial spirit to it. Genuinely, I can say that. Not because it was infused by design, it was just me by the nature of a bit of chaos that existed, right, in that environment. And I think that was amazing. It was really amazing. And it basically, you did what you wanted to do. And yet, of course, you had some education going along the way. And it played a very important role as putting a foundation in place. And then from there on, of course, you do grad school and you
right,
learn a bit more. And then luckily, you ended up in Silicon Valley, right? Again, there's another thing that you may not have ended up in Silicon Valley. I actually didn't know much about Silicon Valley. Some people really aspired to go to Silicon Valley, had no clue. That's just the truth. That ended up here, and here you realize that this is exactly where you belong. If you really want to build things, you belong here. That's so identity definitely played a very important role in a very
Yeah.
unobvious and unique ways.
Such a cool actually way to frame it, to be honest. Like I never thought of something like that where, you could easily look at it as a, not a
Disadvantage.
disadvantage, huge one,
Yeah.
but that is in hindsight, it's the way you frame it is pretty cool. The next one is, you've led three companies to nine-figure valuations. What's one of the Oh, interesting. What is the one question you believe separates like a painkiller from a vitamin product?
Yeah, I think so. And that's a very important, very good question. I'm not reading all the questions, but
Yeah.
who asked is a very good question. I think every time you're in being intellectually honest, when you're trying to build something, if you are not intellectually honest with yourself, sometimes people just want to build something and they want anything is okay and they want to go forward with it, right? But it's very important to be intellectually honest with yourself to say, what I'm going to do, is it going to solve something which is like not solved, number one? And is it going to be a must have? Can people live without it? Can is it going to slow somebody's work? It is not just like a little improvement, like without that certain thing just cannot be done. For instance, today, if you want to use AI in the enterprise, you cannot do it without security of data. So if you don't have security of data, you don't have enterprise AI. Period. Just so it is not like a nice to have. Without that, you can't have AI, and AI is must have, right? So all of a sudden, it is not like a nice to have, which is like people call vitamin, but it is like a must have. It's a painkiller, right? So doing that analysis in a very honest way for your own self, and then frankly for your own team,
Right.
because what you cannot do is to tell your team something which is like not really, because people see through it, right? I mean, people are very, very smart. They also have to know that what they're solving, it is going to be like very important for the market and is going to be successful. So for that reason, you have to do every time you pick something, you have to analyze it. And of course, you can still make mistake. But then if you make a mistake, you want to correct it very fast that you're going towards painkillers, not just vitamins.
That's awesome. Framework. And then actually, I'll take it even another step back in the question where I come from a little bit of an M&A background. The question is, why did VM acquire Security AI? But also, if you could talk a little bit about, if you could, like, how did that process even look like to get to that point?
Yeah. I think often you'll see the companies who are good, they are actually not looking to acquire. And I can share with you exactly what happened. So back in, maybe May or June, I actually would want to kind of raise new funding. So we have raised funding in 2022. 25, 3 years later, we had significant progress made, like 10x the revenues and all of that. Like all the metrics were like
Right.
flying in a way that said we can really go dramatically increase the valuation and we can raise money. And this is a market you really want to go after, right? So I basically just wanted to test the water. So went out to actually test the water, like how does the environment look like? We instantly got like very, very sizable. Within 3 weeks, we got like massive amount of funding offers. Like A1 came and the second came, and it's in the tunes of like hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Like first came at like $300-400 million, then another came at $700 million of funding coming in. And frankly, that whenever that happens, a bit news goes out a little bit, and then of course some
Yeah.
interest starts coming in. That's really the way it turned out to be. It wasn't that you're trying to go out and look for these offers. And in general, I'll say that uh, good companies are not sold; they're bought.
Right.
So and when these things came out, you actually then generally analyze. We had Previously we had like a few offers like that came in 22, 23, like people wanted to discuss. We didn't pursue those. This one was quite interesting because the products that were built, we're already seeing that high adoption. So like 4 of the top 5 airlines in US actually use our product. 2 of the top 4 banks use our products. Like you can pick any vertical security products that are used across the globe, right? And with AI coming through, we want to make sure that we have very high speed go to market quickly so we can get adopted in all those places, right? So here, I think it was interesting that Veeam is a private company. They want to go public, aspirations to go public. And of course, we're also a private company. And we had a good discussion to say if we do a few things, we can go public faster. Yet we can use this tech, which is already getting adopted fast. Can we actually accelerate the adoption of it? And jointly, of course, we go public. That's really the way it kind of turned out. And it turned out to be kind of a good story.
That's awesome. I appreciate look under the hood. And I'll jump to another question because it's sort of related is you're transitioning to the role of President of Security and AI at VM. How do you plan to scale securities technology across VM's global customer base?
Yeah, I think so. One is the securities products across global customers. That's just one question. I will decouple it because even if I was not looking at the entire products of like Veeam, we still have to do that because that was the thesis, right? Where you can take the data command center of security and then Veeam has about 500,000 customers, enterprise, like when the enterprise coverage is a high volume.
Yeah.
So, which means how do we, because what you really want to do get an attach going. So not go through separate cell, find to actually attach. Find the common value proposition and attach it, and then kind of accelerate the adoption going that way. So that we're already doing. We actually have a very specific plan of creating the attaches. So security products can be very quickly be offered as a value prop, and that is rolling. But the role of overall president for all products and all is about unification also.
Mhm.
Because customers, they want to look at the live data and then the whole journey of actually backup data and then seeing in one uniform way. And why that is important as AI comes into the work environment, the agents will start touching more and more data, and there'll be thousands of agents, tens of thousands of agents in any company. When they touch data, they will make mistakes, they will delete some data, they will edit some data wrong, or they will do something. You need resilience into the mix to be able to recover back from mistakes that AI will make. So we want to make sure we have a clear story. And this is a huge opportunity to say not only we can find AI, we can protect data from AI, but we can also actually undo mistakes of AI. And that full story is the one that we were, frankly, but that's something which I'm driving as a overall, and which is a unique value proposition right now across the whole world. That if you can do the whole thing in one place, and that's pretty cool.
I thought AI was perfect, but yeah, that certainly is a very important skill right now to correct the mistakes. So I'm really glad to hear the way you're kind of approaching that side. Seems very, very exciting. We'll still stay a little bit on the Veeam and the acquisition for now, then we can move to some of the other topics. Is that following the acquisition of security, how will your data governance and AI trust technologies be integrated into VM's broader data resilience? You already talked about some of that, but maybe somebody has a very specific question. Yep.
Yeah, I think the way data command center, the way we had in Vegas last week, we had the overall global kickoff. And what we put it out there is that data command center that security has built will become basically the centerpiece, which because it is the overall data command center. And then a lot of information of Veeam is going to come into it, and the backup intelligence will come into it, such that you have full view of the live data and the backup data and the orchestration that goes alongside with it. And the security capabilities, of course, already exist in security platform, but all the protection, data resilience capabilities will basically come into data command center and have one unified way. That's really is the vision, and that's really is the goal. Um, so, and that's what all teams are working. Literally this week we had uh, global products offsite, 3 days, all global leaders from every geography where they were here in Silicon Valley, and we're flashing that out.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate that specific insight. And a bit more broad, where what emerging threats in the AI landscape do you think the industry is currently underestimating, being your industry on that side, or broadly, just general?
Actually, not one, every aspect of it. Every aspect of it, actually.
Right.
I will put in broad category. AI is being used by threat actors to automate the attacks, which means the volume of attacks, sophistication of attacks is going rapidly higher, right? So, which means all kinds of guardrails have to be up. That's just one, the use of AI by the threat actors. But then you also actually have the AI that is coming into the enterprise for good use, like supposedly good use. It is full of issues because it can pick upon the data that is not supposed to be seen because enterprises are not pristinely configured. It can use data and send out in a way that it's not supposed to be sending. The more and more you will say people will enable agents on their side for third parties to communicate using natural conversations. Those natural conversations, just like you can manipulate a human, those
Yeah.
agents can be manipulated because you can converse them into doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. People have different jargon and name for it. You can jailbreak it. You can actually do things that you're not supposed to. Typically you would not expect the AI to be doing, but AI can be talked into it and doing it. So there's a whole framework. I'm not putting security jargons on it, but there's a whole frameworks of it to basically detect those threats on the agents themselves that companies are using. And that's our role come into play, where security for AI and security for data that AI uses is our role in this world. And that is literally, if you ask at this point, this is the hottest topic in every company right now. And that's frankly is the fun part of doing this thing.
Right. No, it's so exciting. A lot of us here like, oh my God, exit number three, done. But it's so exciting to hear that there's that outcome. But also the way when I hear you talk, I feel like you're just getting started. It constantly comes across, not just in the last comment, especially in the last comments and there, which is I feel like for everybody, please take a note. That's the right way to, kind of do these things. Even, you're joining a much larger company. And actually, it's a very nice question where how do you maintain founder mode, which I'm seeing right now, and high execution DNA with a much larger organization that you've just joined?
I think it's again, it's all going to be about your passion to a certain thing. In taking agency when you're trying to solve a problem, just because companies acquire you, you don't just say, look, it's not my problem anymore. You take full ownership of things and you basically take full agency of taking it to all the way down. And I think, and then, frankly, that's the fun part of it. And I'll simply say that if you're an entrepreneur whose company gets acquired and all, it's not end of the journey at all. I think if you have any integrity, if you have any credibility you want to keep in the whole industry, you want to make sure that that thing is successful, right? Just because you made money doesn't mean job is done. Basically, you want to make sure that basically for the company that acquired you, it is very successful for them also. I think, and frankly, that's something to keep in mind. Previously, also when Elastic was acquired, our whole team, we actually made sure for next 2.5 years at Semantic to make sure that product became the fastest growing product in the industry, right? Within Semantic, it became the fastest growing product. Um, Same here. So team is actually more busy than actually before.
It's great to hear. And you guys are, just again, seems like day one, the whole Jeff Bezos thing. Um, and talking about that, the philosophy, there's always roots to that, your personal journey, the NAD, family, this, that. But somebody actually asked, I don't know, I didn't know that. You often cite Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, as a major influence. Which specific principle or principles from that did you most commonly apply, let's say, at security?
In general, I think being good is not good enough. In a tech business, mediocrity, good is like being mediocre, right? So mediocrity is death
Yeah.
in tech business. And I remind myself almost like every week, and I remind, like, frankly, my team very regularly, mediocrity is death. Because tech business, the reason companies become insanely successful very fast is that something new comes. So if you're in that thing that is getting innovated and you're just good enough, and you're not evolving to become like the great company, which means people, culture, products, go to market, everything, somebody will take you over, right? And it happens every year. Like every time you see that industries get kind of completely shifted. And I think that's actually is important that you're keeping in that in mind. Good is not good enough. Like you really have to be like top of your industry. Of course, you're not going to rule every segment, but the things that you're touching in that segment, if you're not on the top quadrant among the one, two top players, you're not going to be relevant very long, right? And the outcomes that people expect, they're not going to be very interesting. So the key thing in the enterprise is that whatever you're doing, you're regarded as like the top player and among the top two players. And that's not like being good is not good enough for
Right.
that.
Absolutely. Makes sense. And you do place a lot of importance, like, some of the most respected founders in my eyes are like on the people, right? That's kind of what it's all about.
Yeah.
And then the values and culture. But as founders or even anybody who's hiring, it's how do you assess those things in a 30-minute, 45-minute interview?
Never gonna happen. Very tough. But I do, so it means you spend more time.
Yeah.
Certain departments, we like literally, I would even to late, I would interview like everyone, not just me. A lot of the other team members I would have like, please have a discussion because in 30 minutes you can't really assess it. To the point, sometimes it's very painful, like for certain people to say, look, every time like we've interviewed 20 people, we haven't hired everyone for 3 months, but it's okay.
Yeah.
The pain that you go through if you have wrong DNA come into, especially for certain roles, or certain functions. Like in certain functions, you need everyone to be like amazing, and certain roles for work you need certain at certain level you have because the people are building the culture downstream, right? So, and secondly, is you try to build from the network or network of networks where you have some referenceability that comes through. So you're not going to find somebody from interview, but you're going to find somebody from. And I do have to say, certain people you can see and talk to them in 5 minutes, in 5 minutes, literally, that you really want to hire that person. I'll tell you a couple of stories. One person who came and interviewed in a weekend and at Elastica, in fact, like end of the day, he came in, does an interview at 5 o'clock. In the first 15 minutes, he's like, we're to hire this guy. And we told him, you're not leaving till we actually give you the offer letter and you have to sign it. So, and we convinced him to sign it like after like wrangling for like an hour. And he of course was a security AI, recently left for his life event. But some people you would actually have in the first few minutes you can tell you want to hire them, right? So it's not like either way. Some people are so amazing that you really want to grab onto them, and then they become like your buddies for a very long time. Yeah, by the way, it hasn't happened once only.
Yeah.
It happened many times. You hired people in first 15 minutes. No exaggeration.
And seems like those are also the kind of longest, most valuable connections, friends. Anyways,
Yeah.
no, that's awesome. Somebody asked, like, I don't know, it seems like you have a venture formula for debugging a startup venture like software. What are the fatal flaws most entrepreneurs overlook during the early stages?
Early stages, the hardest part is the product market fit. Look, you can build anything, right? What can you not build? Within software, you can build anything,
Yeah,
especially now. Like you can
right,
build anything. But if you pick the wrong direction, you basically put the entire team in that direction. And it's not that you can change direction very rapidly and very frequently and all. Like you lose spirit if you're randomly doing it. So it's very, very, very important to be intellectually honest with yourself and the team that what you're doing is actually very well thought out, and it's well researched, and it's a pain point. It's a major pain point, and you go for it. You will still make mistakes regardless of who you are. Right? You still make mistakes. And even Amazon has tried to make phones, and
right.
it's okay. You move on from it, right? So I think that's really the early part is to pick the direction right. Um, and that's not easy answer to it. Is a lot of conviction, a lot of understanding of the ecosystem, is a lot of your gut feel. Often it is there's no math, there's no data to tell you one way the direction. And that's I will say is I'll still every time I've started it, hardest part is the early direction setting.
Absolutely. And just to double click on that, the symptoms are very rarely as visible. The fact that you need to know that you need to look for symptoms, right, is the more important thing there, where this is not working out or whatever. Any quick thoughts on how
Yeah,
do you even know
yeah,
that you need diagnosis at the right time?
yeah. Often it happens. So depending on the what you're trying to solve. In the consumer world, it's a little bit different because people can understand what humans need, and a little bit different. But the enterprise often you're often more deep into the weeds of that area, and you and the nuances that you can start see the shades of gray that others just don't can't see. Because for everyone it's the same one shade, one gray, but you can see like 50 shades there.
Right.
And you know where the world may go because you are like talking to people, you're talking to customers, you establishing conviction, you establishing gut feel. So in the enterprise, often it is that things that look like, if you look at cybersecurity, there are 5,000 companies. They all look the same from outside. So for somebody who's not in cyber, they all look the same. But as soon as you go deeper and deeper and deeper into this, like it's like so many shades, and every shade, many shades could be like amazing
Right.
opportunities, right? Point being that in the enterprise, expertise in the area, domain expertise, or establishing that could be very, very valuable. Or seeing from a different lens, or connecting the dots. When, for instance, when SaaS was coming, we could at least we could see I could see the whole security stack is going to be upside down, right? So you could actually try to project if a SaaS comes, I can solve this thing in a different way. That's the opportunity door got open. I think that's what you basically in the software side. That's what you actually end up doing. That understanding of nuances is where the real innovation actually happens.
That makes sense. Absolutely. Really cool insights there. While, enterprise, you mentioned the consumer versus enterprise side, right? As a really relevant question here, as a three-time founder, what is the most significant challenge you've seen in how enterprise buys security products today versus a decade ago? And broadly, even enterprise. Enterprise sales is a different art and science
It's a
altogether.
beast. It's really a beast. Yeah, I think enterprise is a whole science to it, right? Enterprise, depending on are you selling at the high end of the enterprise or mid market or commercial? Um, when I say enterprise, I mean like when you're selling to a business, it's
Right.
B2B. High end of the enterprise is very different way of selling, and mid market is a bit different, and bottom is interesting but very different. You have to go through channel and all that, right? And you have to learn from it. In a cyber, if you're selling to the high end of the enterprise, you actually have a high touch business because people are willing to spend tens of millions of dollars on your products. Like security products, people are willing to spend millions of dollars every year. So there you have a very high touch. You you have to become almost like a customer advisor because it's a brand new areas. When you go talk to them, you explain them the problem first. You explain them what the art of possible is. You have to earn the trust,
Right.
and then you have to solve their problem, like in their environment. And if you do it, they're willing to pay. In some cases, tens of millions. Millions is normal. Tens of millions is also happening. So I think that's enterprise sales. But if you go to basically mid bit down all the way down, then you have to establish like very strong channel partners, resellers, distributors, marketing, and of course all the demand gen that comes with it. But they often are separate go to market. Of course, you can have self serve and all that in the low end of the market, and the high end of the market is often like selling to CISO is not self serve. It is very enterprise high white glove kind of a service.
Absolutely. I learning this personally, I was completely different. Direct to customer, e-commerce founder, very different, fickle but quick. You could in a day, 2 day validate. From that, I jumped personally straight to enterprise, like true enterprise, where even the smallest company is like a very large publisher or media company or brand. So another question which I have as well, like initially, how do you track the initial customers in that enterprise environment? Not mid-market could be different, especially when you're like building the plane as you fly it.
Yeah. That is see, if you're building it and building in vacuum, already a problem. Which means while you're building it, you're talking to customers and you're doing it yourself.
That's right.
which means partly you're learning, partly you're selling. Partly you're telling them the vision, would I build it, would you buy it? You don't say it that way, but you basically trying to understand the appetite. Earlier question got asked, is it a must-have? If it's a must-have, you're going to say, look, I want to get it too. When you get there, I'm going to get it. So it's not that you build and start selling. You start building and you start selling. You're not selling it, but you're actually assessing it. And at the same time, you know that if you build it, somebody's going to buy it, right? So the journey starts, and frankly, you have to do it yourself in the beginning because you basically are getting the conviction right, also your own conviction, and that's what it happens in the enterprise. And frankly, in the enterprise, often you're starting from the top. So, like today, even today, I had like 3 CISO meetings, right? And this is like some of the biggest banks today, the meetings. But you're engaged with them to actually understand what. Even today, the discussion was like, what are you looking in the AI side? What are the things they're trying to solve? You're always asking that question because we haven't stopped building. We're building, still building. So, which means you still have to keep dialing in what you're building. I think that's how the journey starts with the very first customers that you started the process much earlier, hopefully. So you're not shocked or surprised that what you built just cannot be sold.
Makes sense. Absolutely. A lot of devils in the details in those things. And that is, I feel like the job of the early stage founder is to figure that out, leading to the PMF, and then eventually building to some sort of an advantage or advantages, right? Which is leads to the other question, which is what are other ways to build a competitive advantage beyond your tech? Once it's not building tech in a vacuum, naturally, that has zero advantages. But once you're on to some traction.
So stages. You're going to build a product. Of course, the very next thing, the competitive edge you're going to build is go to market, right? Because reason I say that go to market first is because it's your sales team, their enablement, how they pitch it, how they sell it, how they generate leads. So go to market from how fluid that is, how much cost you have. By the way, it becomes very, very important. You can build the best tech and you can still fail badly if you don't do it right. And if you get that going, you want to build basically your delivery and excellence in delivery because it's not about building best products. You have to make sure customers are happy with it. So you have to have that. But then at a certain point, you start building brand because people buy for brand at a certain point in time because you earn so much trust if you do it all these things right product, salespeople and GTM and is like very trustworthy. You're delivering, you elevate yourself, and if you do the marketing kind of blitz on that properly, you build brand because at some point people start buying just for brand, right? They just trust it so much they just buy for brand. Like if you think about maybe I'm not into cars, but as if you're buying a Ferrari, people just buy like Ferrari. But what is it that you're buying? Or buying a purse or a bag, women buy. It's just a brand, right? At that point, there's not like the product is significantly better. And I think in enterprise world, it is the same. You at some point you have to really elevate the brand so high that, and of course, you have to keep making sure in the bottom what you're doing the best products all the way that you're not missing the foundations. But the companies who do that right, they actually get snowball effect, and they're very successful and build into big, big, big businesses over time. But you have to do all these things right.
Absolutely. Another really big part of being a founder is the fundraising, not just being able to raise funds, but right times. And one thing you mentioned very clearly was very interesting was when you're doing your considering your recent round, you were just feelers out there. Some of the most seasoned founders, I've seen them do it again and again. It's just like check the market and everybody talks to everybody else. Are
Yeah.
there things you see around you that maybe founders can learn from where are often the other way around, where people make mistakes in funding, where it could be simple things that you do, where you could have great product, great company, but you're really bad at the fundraising part. Any mistakes that you see commonly around you?
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of mistakes, but there's some right ways of doing mistakes. There are 1,000 ways of making mistakes.
Yeah.
So what I'll say is that to make sure that, first of all, money is not equal. So when you are raising money, you're getting a partner into the company. And you want to make sure that somebody who understands your business and is going to be have similar vision is going to be supportive, because there are very few glory days in the life of a startup. There are a lot of non-glory days.
Right.
So, which means whoever is coming into the mix in the funding, it's not just funding, it's to make sure they actually they will persist through. And you can trust them, you can become friends with them and all that, right? Over time. Of course, they're coming in for investment and making money, but still you have to have good chemistry. Often mistakes is made, or not the right way of doing it, is that just looking at everyone, all the money is not the same. You have to figure out who's the right fit for you.
Makes
And of
sense.
course, you want to make sure that even you going for subsequent rounds of funding, that have made enough progress that you can really uplift yourself, right? Genuinely, not hype. Like for instance, in 2021, we had all kinds of crazy offers to get money. We didn't touch that money. Luckily, we didn't touch it.
Yeah.
I was getting new CRO, and I was like, why are you not getting all these? We know that you can get this money. Why are you not getting it? So like, this money could be very quickly very toxic, because valuations of multi-billion dollars in 2021 were all fake, and we were early at that point in time, and we didn't touch that money. Often you can make a mistake like that. You take money, set wrong expectations, you can never deliver, and you're stuck, right, in that form. So that's also a mistake. And I think there are many, many things and of course you have to make sure that money is raised on trust in Valley, right? Which means how you execute your companies, how you are executing, and frankly, just like you said, hiring is difficult in 30 minutes. Investing is also very difficult, right? These investors are also putting a bet of sometimes hundreds of millions and maybe more into you or your company, which means you're actually building some level of credibility into the market, which means the things that you do keep in mind, people remember, right? So integrity of all your execution, prior execution is going to matter. Your reputation is going to matter. Often people mistakes they forget that your reputation will carry way far into the future. It'll
Right.
be hard sometimes. All these things matter, that you have to get this thing right. And you're not trying to build your reputation for the sake of it, but you're just doing the right thing. It pays off at the end of it. And I think these things help in raising money. I think I can tell you in all these companies, raising money has never been an issue. Like whenever we want to raise money, we thought is the right time. And when we went out, money was just available. And
Absolutely.
sometimes we didn't take it.
That's really the 2021 is a great example, and some of the people the founders friends or I respected the most or did something similar really quickly was that hell no, let's not do that, to like, hey, did you like really think about, really curious to know, because you could still take the integrity and right choice decision, but the market made it difficult for people like in your position to be like, I'll say no to this balloon valuation and money and preferred terms. And I seen companies that, including my wife's company, where they were like, hey, less is fine. Let's meet,
Yeah.
right? Which was very hard to do for a lot of folks at that time. Really curious, and then we can, kind of start wrapping up.
And same for acquisitions. Like I'll tell you, Elastica, very early into a mix. So let's say Microsoft, and one of the companies came who actually wanted to acquire Elastica very early, like year one. They were really impressed, and like somebody who got really interested, one of the top, hyperscalers now. At that time, they were not the top hyperscaler, and we were not ready. I knew exactly what the product does and what does it do. With like 30 people, they wanted to pay a lot of money for it, and I knew like they will buy it, but they will regret it.
Right.
And we didn't sell at that point in time. And they were surprised that we didn't sell at that point in time, right? And in fact, they thought like this with being arrogant, and they didn't realize we're not arrogant, we're just acting with integrity. And later, of course, they figured it out. But I think sometimes you just have to make judgment calls to say, look, it maybe look like a good outcome. It's not going to be. At the end,
Right.
it's not going to be a good outcome, because it's not going to be successful for the acquirer, because they're just perceiving it to be much more than what we are. And it actually helps over time to build basically your credibility over time.
Absolutely. And this is maybe ending on a little bit of a personal note is like who's your role model or what are your role models and what do you want your legacy to be, if at all? I have a pretty good sense of what it looks like right now, but would love to hear your thoughts.
I think there's so many people to get inspired from. All of us are doing minute little things on the shoulders of so many people who have
Right.
come in the hundreds and hundreds of years back. They've done so many amazing things. And we're sitting on their shoulders, and we're direct beneficiary of the way we live today. We're direct beneficiary of innovations and the creations and the good work of hundreds of thousands of people, and and some really inspiration figures. I mean, some people who are really inspired. If you were to ask me, like, who really, like, people who really have found inspiring, like Leonardo da Vinci, like, you're on creative, insanely creative in all dimensions, from music to art to engineering to physics to, like, how can somebody do that? And I think those there are many figures like that, which was truly inspiring. And if they were not, they do just to make money. In fact, probably
Yeah.
they didn't.
Yeah.
But I think they had an amazing impact on the whole world.
No, I think thank you again, Rehan. Again, thank you for everybody, folks, joining from all parts of the world at all times in the world to hear you, your thoughts. Really appreciate your time, and especially, you one key takeaway for me is you've shown with even numbers and dollars and success that integrity really counts, and you've given many examples of choosing that and then solving a problem with integrity and solving a big problem. For me, that would be one key takeaway to in those moments when you're thinking of questions around that, and it might be a very small spectrum of integrity or might be a major question around that. Integrity can be a very big word. For me, that would be a huge key takeaway, which I will great reminder to stick to that. So thank you for setting an example for all of us, and not just the Pakistani community, but entrepreneurs, founders, anybody everywhere, and for sharing your story, for sharing your time here with us. Um, Thanks again, and hope to have you sometime again soon.
No, I really appreciate it. Thanks for this forum. I think Ali has done a good job. Thank you for asking insightful questions. I really enjoyed the conversation, and keep doing the amazing work that you're doing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you again, Ali. Thank you so much. We'll wrap up, right? Anything else from your side?
No, thank you so much. I think we have 85 people still live. So thank you so much for joining. And we have a lot of questions, Rehan bhai, so I'll probably just email them to you and Ahmed. We still have people joining in. So so I'll just share the questions with you. If you get a chance, reply to it, and I can circulate within our groups.
Will do, Ali. Appreciate it, Ali.
Okay.
Awesome work
Thank
that
you.
you're doing. Have a good one.
Thank you,
Take
Ali.
care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.